нагоди 90-х роковин Голодомору Світова координація Виховно-освітня рада Світового конгресу українців разом з мережею нащадків Голодомору створила проєкт усних розповідей для учнів 8-12 класів. Ми пам'ятаємо, сьогодні пропонуємо першу розповідь цієї серії.
Zoryana Bandriwsky, an active member of the board of directors of the American-Ukrainian Youth Association, graduated of the Ukrainian language school named after Vasil Stus. The interview with Holodomor descendant Pavlo Bandriwsky.
Today, I have the special opportunity to interview the son of a Holodomor survivor, who also happens to be my father, Pavlo Bandriwsky. What does Holodomor mean to you?
Holodomor to me means the deliberate attempt by the Russian regime to murder Ukrainians. My mother was a Holodomor survivor. She was born Nadia Konanovich and lived most of her life as Maria Bandriwska.
And is your mother still alive?
No, she passed away in 1989 at the age of 67.
What did her family do for a living?
Her parents owned a farm where she lived with her folks and her brothers and sisters.
Did they join the collective farm?
No, their land was taken away from them by the communist regime, and then they were forcibly resettled into another oblast.
I would like to hear more about her experience during the Holodomor. How old was she?
She was 10 years old when the Holodomor started.
How did she survive Holodomor?
Her mother would peel bark off of a tree and then boil it into soup in order to feed the family and try to keep them alive.
What happened after Holodomor ended?
At that point, she and the remaining members of her family were resettled into Zhytomyr. She managed to escape the Soviet Union, landed in Germany during World War II, and she was in a displaced persons camp where she met my father. They were married. After the war, they applied for refugee status. They were accepted into America, took a ship here, and came to the United States.
Did any of your other relatives die during Holodomor?
Yes. She lost brothers and sisters who were starved to death because there just wasn't enough to eat.
Tell me about the first time you heard about Holodomor.
First time I heard of Holodomor, I was in my teens. And it was very difficult for me to understand how so many people could be deliberately killed, and yet so very, very few people in America even knew about this genocide.
How did Holodomor affect your mother's life?
There's no question that it deeply affected her. She carried the burden of this trauma for her entire life. 10-year-old child watching her brothers and sisters dying before her eyes like that. People, neighbors, other relatives, all starving. And this trauma was so deep that she just couldn't bear to even talk about it at any point.
What is the situation going on in Ukraine today, and how does it relate to Holodomor?
Today, the Kremlin is waging a genocidal war against Ukraine. Rapes, murders of civilians, destruction of civilian infrastructure, kidnapping of children. All of this is happening in the year that we remember the 10 million Ukrainians who were starved to death by the Moscow regime in 1932-1933. Genocide then, genocide now, 90 years later, the Kremlin does not change.
Please explain to me, what is a genocide? Why do you and others use the term genocide when describing Holodomor or the Russian war going on in Ukraine?
Genocide is the deliberate act of annihilating a specific ethnic or religious group of people. We use the term genocide in describing what happened 90 years ago and what is happening today, because there's a continuation of the Russian terror to eliminate Ukrainians as a people.
How can a nation of people be eliminated?
In the past, forced starvation, mass deportation, exile to Siberia, and a reign of deadly terror were used. Today, Russians used an armed invasion, missiles, tanks, and other evil methods to try to conquer Ukrainians.
Moscow tried to eliminate the Ukrainian nation with Holodomor. Why is Russia doing it now, and will they succeed?
Moscow's leadership is still attempting to build an imperial dictatorship by occupying other sovereign nations. They will not succeed in Ukraine. This war is an existential war for Ukraine. Ukrainians understand that should they lose the war, that means the end of Ukraine. So they will fight to the end until the invaders are defeated and removed from the Ukrainian territory.
Thank you for joining me today and sharing your mother's traumatic experience and your thoughts. I really appreciate it. Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!